They're here on Kharkiv direction, operating on Vovchansk and Liptsi, because Russian invaders are they were trying to push up since May. Our soldiers are beating them up, forcing them to retreat. They operating with the weapon which we call 3/7, and it's a calibre 155th. Very good weapon. He said it's mostly like without any problems. Of course, they would need some more weapon like this. It would really help, but we have what we have. It's important to fight in this direction because Kharkiv, the city of population of almost 2 million people, is usually under Russian attacks, and they are trying to, in their plans, they're trying to conquer it, but our soldiers are resistant to them.
I'm here a little bit back from the front lines in the Kharkiv region of eastern Ukraine. Now behind me is an M777 howitzer. It is an American donated weapon that the Ukrainian army have been using since 2022 to try and fight back the Russian invasion. Now it is very useful here, particularly because the Russians have been attacking. They opened a new front in May where they attacked the towns of Vovchansk and Liptsi. The intention of this was to try and push closer to the city of Kharkiv, which is Ukraine's second biggest city, normally home to over 1 million people, and be able to put it under artillery fire. Now that would cause huge civilian devastation to a city that has already been very badly beaten and bruised throughout the invasion. They told me a couple of interesting things about this particular piece of equipment. So, it is newer and more modern and fires Nato calibre shells, which in effect means that it is much more accurate, has a larger range, and it's much lighter and can be folded up and transported much more easily than the old Soviet-era kit that Ukraine was mainly using at the very, very start of the war. However, the soldiers have also said that the importance of artillery in this war, while still very high, is actually declining, mainly because of the omnipresence of drones on the battlefield. These can be FPVs, Mavics, Lancets, Vampirs, all these different kind of drones that are now being used to spot enemy infantry vehicles and artillery pieces and destroy them. So they almost think that within a few years, it's quite possible that artillery could be almost phased out of the battlefield. But we're not there yet. When it isn't directly firing, the gun is normally kept camouflaged. As you can see here, it's under a lot of leaves and trees. Now, thankfully, the soldiers here, they don't seem to think that showing this is a security risk, so they're happy for me to be here showing it. They made an interesting point about American weaponry, particularly the shells they were using. In the past, they were able to use Excalibur, which are very expensive GPS-guided shells that are extremely accurate. However, over the last year or so, the Russians have been developing very good electronic warfare jamming mechanisms. Now, for an Excalibur to actually explode, the soldiers tell me that it needs to receive a signal from the satellite. Now, the Russians have been able to cut a lot of those signals so that the Excalibur shell effectively just becomes a giant chunk of metal. It can land and it would do damage to something if it landed, but it doesn't explode with the full force that an artillery shell is supposed to. Now, we have heard a lot about how rubbish the Russian army has been and how badly it bungled the invasion in 2022. However, the soldiers here say that it is still a very formidable enemy. It has good electronic warfare systems, it has good drone systems, it has fairly older artillery that isn't as good as the Ukrainian stuff, but they have a lot of it. They often fire between 5 to 10 shells, the Russians do, for every one shell that the Ukrainians fire back. So now the situation on the front line, it's not as dire as it might have appeared 3 or 4 months ago, but it's still very, very difficult, and the Ukrainians are still trying their best to stabilize their lines over the summer.
Старший сержант Романюк Леонід, командир гармати 406 бригада, 67-й дивізіон.
It's 406th Brigade, battalion number 67, 1st Battery, перша батарея. They are here on Kharkiv direction, operating on Vovchansk and Liptsi, because Russian invaders are, they were trying to push up since May. Our soldiers are beating them up, forcing them to retreat. They operating with the weapon which we call 3/7, and it's a calibre 155th. Very good weapon. He said it's mostly like without any problems. Of course, they would need some more weapon like this. It would really help, but we have what we have. It's important to fight in this direction because Kharkiv, the city of population of almost 2 million people, is usually under Russian attacks, and they are trying to, in their plans, they're trying to conquer it, but our soldiers are resistant to them. If you compare ammunition, how much we spent a day, it's 1 to 10. We are still, its situation is a bit better with ammunition, but we still need way more ammunition that we have now. Also, he explained that this exact weapon came from the United States. They actually got it in May of 2022. Two soldiers who are, one of them is the guy who is aiming, one is who is like controlling the shot. They were actually practicing and training in Latvia to know how to use such a weaponry. He also said if to compare post-Soviet Union weapon and now NATO weapon, he said it makes pretty much the same destruction. But of course it's easier to operate more modern weaponry because it's lighter, it's move faster, it's everything getting done faster. And it's moving faster, which saves lives too, which helps infantry more because speed is also a big deal during the war. Average distance of this weapon is about 20 kilometers, but depends on ammunition, it also can shoot up to 40. Usual distance, for example, for post-Soviet Union weaponry is up to 30, but this is targeting much more better, aiming much more better also. So the distance is not a big difference, but depends of ammunition, it can shoot further. He said that yes, they have such a weapon that we can compare to this, but they mostly operate in stationary because if they will spot the movement, they will probably strike everything they can over there. So he said it's difficult to have such a enemy, and they also have a good weapon, unfortunately. So it's pretty tough. So Excalibur has to have a satellite from, satellite connection to hit the spot, because without it, it becomes just metal that is flying in the sky. But basically, that's what he said. He said they used to work with them, but at the moment they are trying to not use them. For example, enemy is also using Krasnopil against us. It's artillery weaponry that we can compare to this 3/7. But he mentioned again that drones are the biggest problem, and they're using everything to hit them, and they were trying to hit them with the weapon, but so far so good. They're lucky, and I guess God is protecting them.
Yeah.
So probably because of their electric defense, like Wi-Fi, because Excalibur is flying, but then it's not exploding because the connection is not getting to Excalibur, like I said, from the satellite. It has to have like a satellite connection all the way.
To detonate.
Yes.
Oh, I see. And so it lands and then just it's a duck.
And just
Okay.
And that's what he mentioned too. That's why he said it's like just a piece of metal that is just like flying towards them. Without satellite connection, it will be not a command for explode. So when the rocket is flying, the ammunition is flying in the sky, and satellite is losing it, then it's not controlling it, and it cannot even give the command to explode. So it's just like basically like a piece of metal that is just like flying towards the ground. He said yes, it was problems about 6 months ago because we couldn't use our artillery weapon as a demoralizing weapon, as the weapon that just like make them nervous. So we had to work only when we would spot the enemy. Instead, but they would shoot us pretty much. I can't say non-stop, but they used way more ammunition than we would 6 months ago. Now situation is a bit better, but still, in ideal version of our world, we would need so much ammunition that we would have way more than them. And he explains that, for example, for 200-hour shots, they would do only 10. That would be perfect for us. About morale, he said that we are more angry now than we were, because it's very hard to tell what is going on with people in the world. And as long as we have enough weapon and ammunition, we will be here, we will be fighting until the victory. But while he was saying it, you can say he's a bit tired. Anyway, he says that morale is good, but they are more angry, they are more about to beat the enemy. So basically he's saying if we would have more ammunition, we would work even more. Because in the past, for example, they would work more openly. They would go to the field. It was not as bad as it's now with drone situation. They would not spot them as easily as now. So they would work from the field, working about 100 shots per day. Now if it's 10-20, they are happy, so it's a big difference. Everything is getting tougher, but in the same time they are ready to stay until the end, until the victory. That's what he said.
Давай. Вроде резина хорошая.
People are dying every day. It's bad that it becomes regular, but unfortunately it's war.
Yeah. So how long do you think we've got to go? How long before everyone just runs out of stuff?
For them it's gonna take years. For us, I don't know. Maybe we will have a little break next year, maybe. Which I really against of. I don't want to break because, like I said, if we will make a break, then they will hit us even stronger. They will have time to collect more people, more weapons. They don't get.
Won't Ukraine have the same thing? Have the same chance to build up more defenses?
We don't have as much humans as they do. They have so many people. We don't have it.
How do you feel towards men who left the country?
It's their choice. I chose to come back and fight for my country because, for example, in 2014 I felt it in my heart that I missed the part when I should also participate, you know. So this war time from 2020, I'm pretty sure I paid my debt.
So I am back here now in the relative safety of Kharkiv city. I say that, but I just received a warning on my phone that said urgent air alert, urgent air alert. But as you can see around me, nobody is doing anything about that. Everybody just sort of continues living their normal lives. So the city was very, very nearly captured in the early days of the war. The Russians actually entered inside the city, but the Ukrainians were able to chase them out. And after that, they basically parked themselves on the northern entrance to the city and bombed it with artillery. Now, the Ukrainians are desperate to stop that from happening again. The brigade that we visited, that is one of their main tasks, to stop the Russians advancing near Kharkiv and being able to put it under artillery fire. However, the biggest danger here, the locals say, are from carb glide bombs, which can be launched from planes over the Russian border and effectively can land inside the city and cause huge amounts of damage. There was one of those such bombing strikes on a civilian target, a shopping mall, a couple of weeks ago here. People are all a bit nervy and a bit on edge. Living here is still very, very dangerous.